So a week ago today, I put out a video on what is going on with the Lauri Markkanen situation and how is it that we still don't know where he's going to land in free agency, being a restricted free agent. Well, here we are a week later and we still have no answer, and at least from a public facing view, not a ton of progress has been made on what his ultimate fate will be with the free agency landscape and teams' cap space all but drying up. So, what is going to be the fate of Lauri Markkanen, and what are some options that can be a realistic outcome for him? And that's what I want to talk about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Real quick, in case you missed my last video, I was lucky enough to get a chance to talk one-on-one with our very own radio play-by-play announcer Chuck Swirsky as he shared his thoughts on the Bulls free agency, summer league, and just season expectations. So feel free to check it out in case you missed it. I'll leave it linked in the description as well as on the end screen of this video. And one of the topics we did discuss was what will happen with Lauri Markkanen, especially now that this is dragged out for so long, nearly 2 weeks after the opening of free agency. So I've already talked before about the disappointing regression we have seen from Markkanen from his rookie season and sophomore season to his two most recent seasons, and of course injuries haven't really helped any of that, so I won't belabor the point any further. I think we're all, we've all done enough of our fair share of ripping into Lauri for a good portion of this season, so I won't go on and on about it further, but rather discuss what could come about with Lauri Markkanen and his future with the Chicago Bulls. So obviously it's no secret now that Lauri Markkanen has made it clear based on a recent interview that he did with a Finnish reporter that he would like a fresh start to his career on a new team. And even towards the end of the season, after Lauri was benched, when it was clear that him and Vucevic didn't fit well together in the starting lineup, that Markkanen's future with the Bulls was in doubt. Now, we all know the Bulls front office and Lauri's agent tried to come to an agreement on an extension to his rookie contract prior to the start of last season, but ultimately they were too far apart on coming to a contract extension. And so Markkanen decided to bet on himself, play hard in the upcoming season, and get some big offers as a restricted free agent. Well, of course, Lauri had an even worse season than he put up in his third year, and now he's held out so long for the payday that he's been seeking the most that most of these teams have run out of cap space to even give him an offer sheet. Of course, there have been rumors that there are a handful of teams interested in Lauri, but because most teams have a limited cap space to sign him as a free agent outright, they would need to acquire him in the form of a sign-and trade, which is great news for the Bulls because they have all the leverage in the event of a sign-and trade to actually get something in return for Markkanen. Otherwise, they could simply say, good luck getting him with a straight offer without a trade when you don't have the cap space to make it work. We'll just keep him and have him forced to take the qualifying offer at $9 million. Now, the teams that have been linked to Lauri Markkanen the most, as having the most interest anyway, are the Dallas Mavericks and the Minnesota Timberwolves. At one point, the Hornets were in the mix to give Markkanen an offer, but then they signed or used the remainder of their cap space to bring in Kelly Oubre Jr. You also had the Spurs being the primary interested team in Markkanen, and it was assumed that the Bulls, when they executed that sign-and trade with DeMar DeRozan, that Markkanen would be included in that trade package for DeRozan. But no, evidently Markkanen wanted more money than the Spurs were willing to pay him in a sign-and trade, and that ultimately meant moving Thaddeus Young to the Spurs instead. So with the Dallas Mavericks being one of the more interested teams in Markkanen, what are some potential sign and trade opportunities the Bulls could take advantage of? Now, there has been word that the Bulls are looking for a first-round pick in exchange for Markkanen so that they don't have to take on any immediate salary. But not only that, the Bulls don't have many first-round picks in the near future, given they already traded 3 first-round picks, 2 of which they moved for Nikola Vucevic and 1 in which they received in exchange in DeMar DeRozan in that sign and trade deal. It's also possible the Bulls could be looking for a first-round pick in a sign and trade scenario for Markkanen, because should the Bulls be found guilty of tampering in the current investigation into the sign and trade for Lonzo Ball, well, then there are likely going to be penalties handed down to them in the form of fines and forfeiting draft picks. Now, I've said before, even if the Bulls are in fact found guilty, Lonzo isn't going anywhere. They're not going to void the trade. That would be disastrous for the league and a huge backlash from their fans. Lonzo has signed a contract. The deal is done. He's not going back. He's going to be a Chicago Bull. But it's very possible a first round pick might have to be given up as a penalty for tampering. So it's not a bad idea to get a first round pick in a sign and trade for Markkanen. It's really more of an insurance policy in case things don't go their way in this investigation. All of that being said though, if a first round pick is out of the option, say a team isn't willing to give up a first round pick for Markkanen, which I don't think is completely dismissible. It's not like Lauri is a scrub and he could fetch easily a mid to late first round pick. But if a first round pick isn't an option, who could the Bulls realistically target in a sign and trade with the Mavericks? First of all, Porzingis is not going to be an option. I've seen a lot of Bulls fans saying that we should trade Markkanen for Porzingis, but that can't happen for a number of reasons. One, being that Porzingis is playing on a max contract right now, so you couldn't do a straight trade for Markkanen, even if you gave Markkanen the $20 million a year that he wants, because the salaries won't work. Two, the Bulls don't have the salary cap space to even take on Porzingis, and if they wanted to, they would have to trade additional players in order to bring him in, which doesn't make sense for a guy like Porzingis. And finally, Porzingis is not that kind of player you want to bring in for the Bulls on a massive contract for a guy who is injury prone and really doesn't make up for much of Markkanen's deficiencies other than being a slightly better shot blocker and rebounder. So no, Porzingis is not going to be an option. For me, I'm looking more at a guy like Maxi Kleber. He gives the Bulls the needed front court depth considering he's a 6'10 power forward. He can give you a little bit of scoring off the bench and plays decent enough defense. Nothing to get excited about, but okay defense. He's 29, so he fits the Bulls timeline and is only making near $9 million for the next 2 seasons, which the Bulls can afford if they were to trade Markkanen and remove that qualifying offer cap hold. Now, I don't just think that Kleber alone is enough for Markkanen if you're going to do a sign and trade, because the Bulls can get more for Markkanen than just Maxi Kleber. So I think why not throw in another guy like Josh Green to take a chance on him? He doesn't really fit the Mavericks roster, and to be honest, he likely wouldn't really for the Bulls either, because you're talking about another shooting guard, but why not take a chance on a guy like Green, who's only 20 years old, was a first round pick in last year's draft, barely got any playing time, didn't really do much for the Mavs, but I think the potential is there. And if you can include him and Kleber, which the Bulls can afford, that's a pretty solid return for Markkanen, especially considering there was a possibility you could lose Markkanen for nothing anyway. Now, the other team is the Timberwolves that have apparently expressed interest in Markkanen. Now, I'll admit, I never really quite know what the hell that franchise is trying to do. I mean, they're right up there with the Kings for being one of the most dysfunctional franchises in the NBA, which the Bulls were right up there too, by the way, until this new front office came in. But the Timberwolves, I think an interesting sign and trade opportunity would be for Juan Hernangomez. I actually talked about his brother Willie being a good option for the Bulls for some front court depth until that is he re-signed with the Pelicans. Hernangomez and a second round pick is what I think would make sense for Lauri Markkanen. Now, I thought about throwing in a second player into this because Hernangomez isn't going to be enough for a straight trade with Markkanen, not even close, but I really couldn't find another player on the Wolves that would actually fit the Bulls roster. I thought about including Jaden McDaniels, who I actually think would be a nice fit because he's another power forward, a young player, only 20 years old, but I doubt the Wolves would ever give up both of these guys for Markkanen, especially McDaniels, because there's upside potential with him, even though he kind of had a below average, underwhelming rookie season. And Hernangomez and a first round pick would be nice, but the Wolves aren't going to give up their first round picks, especially considering they're always in the lottery every season. They're not about to hand over a lottery pick for Markkanen. Now, I get it. Neither of these trade options are really all that ideal. It's not a great return for Lauri, but you also have to recognize that you're getting something in return for Lauri Markkanen rather than letting him walk for nothing. And I do think ultimately the Bulls will get a sign and trade done for Markkanen because, as I mentioned, they know that they have quite a bit of leverage in the situation given the fact that free agency has dried up and most teams are out of cap space. And if teams do in fact want Markkanen to be able to fit them in to their roster, into their salary cap, they're going to need to trade away assets to shed enough salary to bring him in. Now, of course, there is always the very, very small option that Lauri Markkanen decides that he really doesn't like the offers he's getting. He opts out yet again, bets on himself yet again, and chooses to accept the Bulls' qualifying offer of $9 million for 1 year and then becoming an unrestricted free agent next offseason. And of course, if he does, well, you know, he shows that he's capable of being more than just a stretch 4 spot-up shooter. He could see himself getting a bigger payday than some of his current offers, whether it be for the Bulls or for other teams around the league, if he shows up well. and performs very well for the Bulls, unlike what we've seen in the last 2 seasons. And maybe this time he'll learn his lesson and take a good deal and not wait it out until it's too late. Now, I've said before, I don't think that there's any chance that Markkanen takes the qualifying offer based on what he said in the past about wanting to play for a new team, about how he's not going to play on a qualifying offer. He evidently deleted the Bulls from all social media platforms. And so my initial thoughts was, I don't even think I would want this guy back on the qualifying offer, because even though the salary is a steal for someone like Markkanen at his age, the last thing you want on your team is a guy who doesn't want to be there, who isn't going to give you effort every night, who might present to be a locker room problem, knowing everything that he has said about the team and not wanting to be in Chicago, but then ends up staying. All of that. Like, even for $9 million, you might as well go and get someone else. Go and get someone else who actually wants to be here. But as I thought about it more, and really this notion kind of came to me after talking with Josh Sikorsky, and maybe Markkanen could swallow his pride, come off the bench as a strong scoring option in the second unit, show up well, hustle, play with effort, and you will get yourself a nice contract in the following offseason. Again, he has a unique skill set in this league, being an outside shooting big man with a quick release. So if the front office can somehow sit down with Lauri, talk to him, convince him to take the qualifying offer and accepting this role of coming off the bench, but still playing enough minutes to be able to showcase his abilities and what he can bring and set him up for success going into next offseason, because really he kind of swung and missed this offseason, then maybe it could work out. Again, I think this is doubtful. I think ultimately Markkanen will be playing for another team this upcoming season, but it's not a bad option for the Bulls given they are a little weak in the front court right now after losing Tice and Thaddeus Young. I want to know what you guys think though. What do you think is the most likely outcome for Lauri? Where do you think he will be playing next season? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.